You're listening to the NASM CPT podcast with Richey, winner of the Share Care Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey, y'all, and welcome to the NASM CPT podcast. My name is Richey, and today we're going to continue on with some of the things we've been working on, which is a solutions table review. The solutions table are in the overhead squat assessment in general. When you see something, say something. So if you see things like feet turn out or knees cave in or anterior pelvic tilt, the back starts to arch, then we have a solutions table review for that. Well, today it's going to be a solutions table review for arms fall forward, and we're going to use the corrective exercise continuum to kind of focus on this. And if you have the corrective exercise textbook, this is table 14.4 within the textbook. Now, this is a good test for overhead flexibility, this overhead squat assessment. And what happens sometimes? You take the arms up overhead and maybe they don't go all the way up overhead. And a lot of times you're looking at this from the side. So it gets kind of tricky and these are things you have to be careful of. When you look from the side and the arms are up overhead, sometimes you can't see if the elbows are bending. Now, the elbows usually aren't bending because of your super tight biceps. The elbows are usually bending because I need to, if I take my arm all the way overhead and I don't have that flexibility, then I need to start adducting from that really high abducted position, arms overhead. So I have to bend at my shoulders to try to bring them back down. So they may not look like they're falling forward. Sometimes they fall to the side. And if they fall to the side, the elbows stay bent. And if I only look from the side, then I cannot actually tell. I cannot tell that the elbows are bent and therefore cannot see the arms fall forward. So sometimes you're going to have to take this in multiple views. And I know that we say from a lateral view, we want to see if arms fall forward, but we also need to see either from the front view or the posterior view, whether or not the arms are bending and therefore adducting from a fully abducted position. All right, cool. So that's going to be something that's pretty interesting. But if I see the arms fall forward, or if I see that the elbows are bending, so they're bringing the arms down, I'm going to usually do a follow-up assessment. So what I have them do is I have them lie down. I'll have them bend their knees so that their feet are flat on the ground. And then I have them push their low back into the floor. Now, what that does is going out of that arch, doing a little posterior pelvic tilt will actually add stretch to the lats. Then whilst they are lying down, I'll have them take their arms all the way overhead. And with gravity's assistance, it will start to pull their arms towards the floor. So as they bring their arms up over their chest, like they've just done a dumbbell fly, but now they start to reach their arms all the way overhead. Or remember, they're lying down face up. So as the arms go overhead, do the arms actually touch the ground? And if they do, and their arms fell forward when they were doing the upright position, that's probably not an indication so much of tightness, but of weakness in scapular upward rotation to be able to bring the arms all the way back or all the way up into extension. So that's an indicator. It's just a follow-up assessment. Now, if their arms go backwards and they still can't go all the way overhead while in that supine position, I'm going to say most likely definitely a flexibility issue. Now, we need to identify where that flexibility lies. Oh, another assessment when you see from a lateral view that can throw you off is that sometimes people, when they squat, they get a forward head, or we've been taught sometimes pick a spot on the ceiling, or even in an overhead squat assessment, you pick a spot directly in front of you. And when you squat, your head stays right in line with that. So it creates a nutation in your head. And as your head nutates, it makes it look like your arms are going forward, but that's just because your head is going forward. So be very aware that you're looking at the arms in relationship to the body and not in relationship to the head. So if the head is moving, it's going to throw you off. So you can actually cue them, just try to keep a neutral position with your head. So as you squat, let your head go forward with the pitch forward with the squat instead of jutting forward or looking up. So that is a cue that you can give, that I give sometimes, in order to better see what's going on at the shoulder joint where I'm not distracted by extraneous head movement. Okay, so now we can also look at something else. There's thoracic kyphosis that can also limit scapular upward rotation, and that keeps the arms from being able to go up overhead. But let's now look at the solutions table and pay attention to what this can be. So it's a solutions table, corrective exercise program for the thoracic spine and shoulder, arms fall forward. And I like that it says the thoracic spine because of that increased thoracic kyphosis. If you have that big spinal flexion in the upper back, then it's going to make it harder for the arms to move overhead with a smoothness, with ease that we would like for them to move overhead. So there are 4 phases in the NASM corrective exercise model. First phase is inhibiting the muscles, then you're going to lengthen the muscles, then you're going to activate the muscles that don't have the strength that we would like for them to have. And then once you inhibit and lengthen the short, tight, overactive muscles, and then you strengthen the underactive muscles, the ones that aren't providing the strength needed, then you're going to do an integrated exercise where you are now practicing flexibility and activation within the same movement pattern. So let's look at the first phase of the NASM OPT, not the OPT model, the corrective exercise model, and that is going to be the inhibitory phase. We're going to inhibit. Well, how? What inhibitory techniques are we going to use? As a personal trainer, we do not put our hands on our clients. We do not massage them. We do not say, hey, let me get my thumb in there in that trigger point. What we utilize is something called self-myofascial rolling. That's self-administered. That means they do it to themselves. So we will coach them with things like a foam roller. Mostly, that's what we use a lot. And that becomes really, really indicated when we do the thoracic spine, because you can do some other things. Like there are balls that you can roll on and things like that that are designed to create inhibitory releases, kind of things on muscles. But you wouldn't do like a round ball for your upper back unless it was maybe inflatable and then not inflated that hard, so there's not a lot of tension, because you want to be able to have some type of give in that. Well, a foam roller is nice and long, and so you would do that long crossways. So if your thoracic spine is moving up and down, then you're going to do the foam roller perpendicular to that and extend the thoracic spine over the roller. And not only is that like a self-myofascial, but that is also, in some instances, like a self-chiropractic. I know when I do it, it sounds like some bubble wrap in there. I just feels good to me. So I'll foam roll, but make sure you're staying in between the shoulder blades, and you can go all the way down to the inferior angle of the shoulder blades, but don't roll onto the thoracic spine. First of all, it's not indicated, and the arms fall forward. But secondly, the thoracic spine doesn't have ribs to help support it. So if you foam roll on the thoracic spine, then you put a lot of pressure into that spine, and it can be potentially contraindicated as opposed to indicated, where it is highly indicated if we have somebody with an excessive thoracic kyphosis. We want to extend over that foam roller, roll in between the shoulder blades as we extend our thoracic spine over the roller to try to get some range of motion and get a little mobility in the thoracic spine. Then we're going to move on to 2 different muscle groups. One is the lats, and that's the one where arms fall forward. You might see when the arms go up, the low back starts to arch and they go into an anterior pelvic tilt. And that's because the lats are pulling up on the posterior side of the pelvis, pitching or tilting the pelvis anteriorly. The top of the pelvis, not the bottom of the pelvis, the top of the pelvis shifts forward, and that indicates some tightness in the lats as your arms go up overhead and the low back arches. So the first muscle instead of like just the thoracic spine and the erectors in there. But the first muscle that you might want to consider foam rolling is the latissimus dorsi. So you're going to go through the lats, foam rolling, holding tender spots for 30 to 60 seconds, and then just hit a few different areas along that lateral border of the scapula. So you'll get a little there and then just go to the inferior angle, and just below the inferior angle where you're going to get a lot more lat. So that's a good one. Then you can move on to the next muscle group, which is the pec major. Pec major, pec minor both be highly indicated to foam roll, but I want to point something out. I mentioned it before. When you're rolling, if it pulses, numbs, tingles, or shoots, you got to get off of it. So as you do your foam rolling technique, whether with a foam roller or some type of ball that is designed to get into smaller places like the pec major and pec minor in particular, there is a bundle of nerves that goes underneath the pec minor called the brachial plexus. And so you could be rolling on that nerve. Now, if you feel it shooting down your arm, if you feel pulsing, numbing, tingling, shooting, get off of it. That is not what you're trying to release. This is not, you don't get neural release by rolling on nerves. You get neural hyperfacilitation, which creates more muscle activation to try to protect the nerve from what's going on. So stay off the nerves. Man, you get on my nerves. Stay off the nerves, for goodness sakes. Okay, so we're going to roll through the thoracic spine, the latissimus dorsi, and the pecs. Then we can move on into the next phase of the corrective exercise continuum, which is the lengthening phase, which is basically you take the same two things that you've done, what you did in the foam rolling, and you're going to now stretch it. So you're going to stretch your lats, holding for 30 seconds, and you might want to do a few reps of a 30-second hold. And same thing with the pec. You want to stretch out and hold the pecs each side 30 seconds. You may want to do a second, even a third set, depending on how tight they are. And then one of the other things that I have people do, which isn't listed in this continuum, is doing an active extension in the thoracic spine. Do an active extension in the thoracic spine. Sometimes I'll do it standing, and I just have them go into a posterior pelvic tilt to protect their lumbar spine, arms up overhead, and then just extend their thoracic spine as much as possible and hold it for a few seconds. And then come back down, go back up into as much thoracic extension as the arms go up overhead as you can, and hold it for a few seconds. And that is a way to strengthen the erector muscles of the thoracic spine. They don't think that you just mobilize it and then walk away from it. So adding some strength, adding some lengthening. That is a strengthening exercise. We're talking about lengthening. That was the problem. So you can move that down into the activation exercise. So static stretch your lats, static stretch your pecs, and then move into your activation exercises, where you can then activate the thoracic extensors by going into that exercise that I just mentioned. But also there are a couple of muscles, the rhomboids and the traps. The mid and lower traps are the primary muscles that you're looking at here. So you can do things like cobras and YTAs and scaptions. I even think that rear delt flies are excellent for this. And so there are some really great exercises, doing it slow, controlled, focus on high repetitions. And the high repetition isn't so much necessarily that I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger, but it is teaching your nervous system, teaching your muscles, teaching your body that this is a position we're going to go to and come out of over and over again to add strength. But then it's also to add behavior, right? I want to behave in this position. I want to really focus on more of a retracted position in my scapula, more of an upward rotated position in my scapula. I want a more extended position in my thoracic spine. And so as we practice that, we get more and more used to being there. And that is important. And then we move on into an integrated exercise. And one of the integrated exercises I like for almost anything, I love squat to row, using a cable machine, squat to row. But I like this squat to row in the transverse plane this time. So you're going to do elbows out to the side, horizontal abduction. And that way you can really focus on posterior deltoids instead of your lats, posterior deltoids while still getting the retraction, the mid traps and the rhomboids to work in that retraction exercise. So squat to row, doing the row in the transverse plane. All right, that is table 14.4, the corrective exercise strategy for the arms falling forward. Inhibit, lengthen, activate, and integrate. And we're going to inhibit lats, pecs, and the thoracic spine, static stretch, lats and pecs, isolated strengthening, rhomboids, mid traps, lower traps, and even the extensors of the thoracic spine, and then an integrated exercise, squat to row, doing the row in the transverse plane, slow, controlled, focused. Y'all, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do so. Hit me up at dr.rickrichey on Instagram or email me rick.richey@nasm.org. Y'all keep inspiring people to fitness. Thanks for listening. This has been the NASM CPT Podcast.